Look, I'm thrilled. So, look, colleagues, I'm conscious of the time. So the first thing I will do is say, welcome to our first professional development session for Charles Darwin University. My name is Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies here, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have our friends who have joined us from all over the place, all over the world to be with us. Very, very experienced colleagues and colleagues that are just starting on this journey. So I'm absolutely thrilled. And I will commence with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging all the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, elders past, present and emerging, and any Indigenous colleagues with us today. So are we ready for a fabulous time, friends? Well, see, Lorraine, I just get this. Do I get a yeah or just? And by the way, you can feel free to demute. Don't worry about it. I'm only here for you. We're going to have a fantastic time. The beautiful Irene is in. All my favourite people are in. Aotearoa New Zealand has joined us. Kia ora, sir. Kia ora. It is wonderful to see you, brother.
Kia ora there. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, mate. And beautiful Nadika's in. So, colleagues, let's begin, shall we? Let's begin. And hopefully you've got some of the interesting paperwork that was sent to you and examples and archetypes and stuff. So what we're going to do, the first little bit of this gig, and it's all interactive, so it's not me talking because that's just dull, but it's about getting you into the mindset of writing a book proposal, because we all focus on the book, but actually the book proposal is a very specific genre or oeuvre of writing. And it is advertising, it is marketing for your project. And they are often written before the book's even written or after a book is written either. And we'll talk about both of those today. So let me just, colleagues, start with you. Let me start with you, and we'll start probably with the one for Baxter, because I haven't seen the Baxter in so long. So Baxter, tell us a little bit about you and why an academic book exists for you now. What's drawing you to a book now?
I think my supervisor was never pushed herself to do a book, and so she wants to do that for me. And I don't know what else to do at the moment. I'm not quite sure what path, now that it's been examinations done, it's been conferred. I've got like the ground copy of it in front of me. So yes, this is really important information that I wanted to contribute to society. So an academic text seems to me like the logical way to go.
Fantastic. So I think all that works. And so we now have a completed PhD. We will be doing another professional development session, can I say, converting a PhD into a scholarly monograph. So that'll be coming shortly. But Beck, what we need to do, and this is a lovely first step into that, is configure a new document for you, a book proposal, and we need to go through some questions. Let's go through this process for you, put fresh eyes on your thesis, and try and enable this new pathway and new life for you. Let's make this a book. I think it's straightforward, but we need to, because the audience for a PhD are 2 or 3 people. The audience for a scholarly monograph, and we'll talk about this, colleagues, you've really got to get to, as a minimum, 500 to 750 purchases for a book to make it a financially viable protocol. So whatever we're going to do in the next little bit, we need to say, what can I do? How can I configure this project so that 750 people on planet Earth will read it and buy it, and therefore it's of no risk to the publisher? So Baxter's taken us on there. We'll go to the other end of the PhD investigation and look at Queen Piper. So Piper, who looks fresh as the daisy today. Good morning, Queen Piper from beautiful Adelaide. Now, Piper, what's your book? What's the role of a book in your future, my darling?
So I think, yeah, you've basically said it. I'm looking into the future. So the thesis is only starting to be written now. So I guess that, we talked this morning even about maybe starting to put that book proposal together alongside the development of the thesis. So thinking about that as the end game, I guess.
So I think that's great. So colleagues, the reason why I picked on poor Beck and poor Piper is Piper is, while she's doing the thesis, having a book proposal document that she's configuring through the very writing of the thesis. Baxter has the document, has the success, but what does she do now? So I'll go to almost the person in the middle, which is John. Now, John, this is important for you. This is a major moment for you. What is bringing you to this academic book publishing moment at this stage of your candidature, or your life, your career?
I'm not sure, but it's more, I think, as the others have, that I've done the research. I think it has a lot of interest in there, and I'd like to get it out there.
Now, and this is, we're going to come back here, John. So what I need you to have a think about in the next 5-6 minutes is, when we're saying out there, who's the audience for it? So that's what we're going to spend a bit of quality time thinking about the audience, because your proposal fails or it succeeds on your capacity to be granular and name with specificity who the readers will be. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Hemok Perake, how are you, mate? So brother, you're obviously a very experienced, wonderful scholar and human, and noting the importance of biculturalism and multi-language, multiculture, and making sure there are audiences for that around the world. How are you approaching this as a mindset, mate?
So currently where I'm at is my PhD by prior publication. It's really weird for me because essentially at the end of the day, I have the publishing record of an associate professor. So therefore, and I'm still early career researcher. Sorry about the thing in the background doing something. And so for me, where I'm currently at is there's possibly an opportunity there for me to go to a Fulbright. And so within that Fulbright space, I was going to put time aside to go and do or write a book, largely as a calling card. So for my approach to this is, while I have all of these journal articles, I need to focus this down. The PhD by prior publication has given me a platform, and it's about taking that platform and extending that to different case studies that explore the idea of Indigenous sovereignty, Indigenous political science, basically in the wake of what's happening here in New Zealand with the current far-right government, and also in the wake of Voice to Parliament.
Spot on. So, mate, I'm so glad you've joined us, and I'm so grateful, and you're a great friend and colleague in my life, can I say. But you've led us into a different direction here. For our colleagues that are doing a PhD by prior publication, or indeed an artifact exegetical thesis, you've got a big chunk of words at the start. So we're talking 20, 30, 40,000 words. That, of course, is an ideal short book that, of course, Springer is specialising in, Emerald is specialising in. We will be doing another, can I say, PD session on the short book. But, mate, when you're writing that contextual statement, that integrating paper, you are writing that to be cut away from the publications, to have its own life. And colleagues, remember what he said that was so brilliant. It is a calling card. That in many ways is where we're at. For many of you, this is a calling card to enable the next stage of your career, consultancies, all sorts of positions. So I'm thrilled, mate. Brilliantly said. Can I move now? I will involve the Jack. So Jack, I'm going to rely on you heavily through this, and you knew I would. So just tell everybody, Jack, how many books you've got, Dale?
8, and the 9th one is in writing as we speak, but nowhere near as many as Tara.
Yes, but you're just magnificent, and they were things of quality. Mine was sort of thrown out of the trolley after a bad night. So, mate, the conversation I want to get people into now is the hard one. So, a lot of our colleagues like the Baxter, they've got a chunk, right? So they've got to translate the chunk into something. But for a lot of colleagues, they have an idea that might be post the thesis, and it's the next book, or in the case of Sonia, it really is moving an idea into a title. So this is a hard question, Jack, and I'm only asking you because I don't know the answer. How do you know when a good idea can become a good book, my darling?
Yeah, I think I'll bring it back to what you were talking about earlier, which is, who is going to read this, who is going to be interested in it, and then has this idea got legs, as we like to say, and how far is it going to run? But we're always thinking about the audience for this book. Who's going to actually read this, and how is it going to be useful to them? How is it going to change their life? You know, if you write a book like that, hallelujah. Mostly we write books that are useful to people. So, yeah, I think that when you're thinking, right, I've got this idea and the cat, and what happens next? Yeah, you're always kind of thinking, well, who is at the end of that process? And how am I going to do something that is going to help or be useful? That's how I kind of approached it. I think, yeah, great idea. I wake up with them every day, but whether it's got, you know, the meat to get to the end of that process, that's how I kind of start. Having come from a journalism background and a professional communication background after that, we always put readers at the centre of everything. Well, we should. It doesn't always happen in journalism, doesn't always happen in professional communication, but good communication is about that reader and thinking about them. When we're writing books, we can often get really caught up in, oh, this is great and this is interesting to me, but is it really interesting to anyone else?
You are brilliant, Jack. Do you see why we love Jack so much? So that's the point of a book proposal. It's actually the point of a book. But the great thing about the honesty of a book proposal is it focuses the mind. We may love it, but we actually don't matter. We write a book to be of service to other humans. And as I said to John, we have to be very granular in our understanding of who those humans are. You know, their age, their nationality, and we'll focus in a second on how we configure those national audiences. But you see how brilliant Jack is? We all have lots of ideas, but an idea becomes a book when we have a sense of who the audience is. So you really need to, in many ways, start with the who and then go back to the what. What do you reckon, Jack?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the thing that annoys me when I read book proposals, because I do a lot of reviewing of book proposals, is this is not just for an academic audience, but the general public will be interested in it. And I keep thinking, are you a third year student or a first year student? The general public, who are these people? They don't actually exist because, of course, we know that there's not just one public, there are multiple publics. And people move in and out of them at different times in their life, depending on their geographical location and their interests, because we have communities around geography, but communities around interests, and we move in and out of these. So you can't just say, oh, the general public will be interested. You have to be much more focused on who are these people, what are their interests. Do they go to bookshops and buy books, or do they borrow things from the library, or do they share books, or, you know, one person in an extended family buys a book and shares it around? Are they, you know, what demographics do they come from? If you can nail that, I think a publisher will be really happy with you, because it's the generalizations that are the fail when it comes to the reader and the proposal.
Spot on, because I mean, Jack and I probably do between 30 and 50 book proposals a year, and we have certain proxies. We hate to be reader to, and we want to support people. We love books. Can I just say also on behalf of us all, I'm so happy that this group of humans is with us, believing in the book in anti-intellectual times. This is so extraordinary. But as Jack has said, the moment we see general reader or everybody or a general audience, the moment we see any of that, it's gone. Your proposal is gone. It's out. That's how serious it is. So Juanita, darling, one, you were just, I heard a there. So where are you on the general reader and general audience? And gee, it's wonderful to see you again, my love.
I sort of, can you hear me? I'm not sure
Look, I can.
I've been thinking more along that what I wanted to write about is would make use of anyone going into social work or into the mental health area who are dealing with disengaged youth and children with difficulties and problems, and sort of working away from victimhood into survival sort of thing is where my head is with this. So that's sort of but just listening here, that's who I'm thinking around who would my target audience be?
Right, well, that sounds, you've convinced me
Yeah.
already. I'd book them, Dano. So Jack and Sean were straight in there going, yeah, we'd buy that book. That's fantastic. So we need to make, there's an audience of an increasingly large book collection, can I say, of how-to guides, right? So moving people into academic life or moving people into particular professions, the how-tos. Sage does a lot of them. Berg does a lot of them. So that's a great project, and you're clear on who the audience is, and that audience actually exists. So I think that's a rip snorter. Well done, you.
Thank you.
Oh, we'll come back to you in a second, but I need to talk to the most glamorous person on this call, which is of course Lola. Good, and you knew I'd be speaking to you, Lola. Good morning. How are you?
Hello. Well,
Hello.
it's good to meet you face to face on Zoom after we've had a little bit of internet discourse over the last few years.
Yes, I've been stalking you, but I want to talk to you about
I've been
glamour.
stalking you.
I'm
Yeah.
stalking you. I want to talk to you about glamour, and I want to talk to you about the glamorous bit of a book proposal. Jackster and I have talked about the moment we see general reader or general audience, we basically head desk and proposal gone. But Lola, the way you attract people, particularly reviewers, particularly editors and publishers, you've got about 15 seconds to hook somebody in, the editor in a publishing house. And of course, that occurs through the title. So tell us a little bit in terms of your perspective, because obviously I can only imagine how fabulous the books are that you're writing at the moment, and I am your audience, Lola, but you know that. Tell me about title and how you would play the title and the subtitle, Queen Lola.
Well, I haven't written a book yet, so my background is in burlesque practice. I am the person who performed burlesque for their PhD. So the title and the book title would would to me act like a tagline, a performer's name and a tagline. So, for example, my performer name Lola the Vamp, and my tagline would have been something like Australia's burlesque icon. That was for a specific audience, though. That was for burlesque performers and people within that specific cabaret industry who know who sits where within the sort of pantheon of performers and the attraction of a certain name for a show. So I'm in a similar position to Rebecca in that I have a body of work that's been sitting around my neck for a long time, which was my PhD thesis, and I'm looking to. I haven't been able to decide for years whether to publish it as a popular book or an academic one. And it's a very interesting line between those two things, in terms of, it's really interesting to hear this stuff about, the specificity of audience, which is very similar to the performing arts, and also, the title and subtitle.
Now, Lola, mate, you can do both, but you're going to have to call it. So the other tip for punters, and I didn't know how magnificent you would be on this, Lola, and there you are once more, the light of my life.
You're too kind.
Oh, but I'm also so thankful that you're in all our lives, really. But you need to make a decision. You can. So burlesque is what we're looking at. The notion of burlesque performance from a performer's perspective. That is the clustered nuance of what we're doing. Now you do have to make a decision. Follow Jackie's expertise and say, who is the audience for this? I would write the academic book first, to be frank with you, because I think that's your calling card, noting your positioning in your academic career at this point. So I would have a title and a subtitle that you absolutely have the words burlesque and the words performance in there, which of course activates performance studies, gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer studies. In we go. So they are guaranteed, write them down, audiences for you, but you need the words burlesque and performance in the title and the subtitle to make that dance. What do you reckon?
Yeah. That sounds quite logical, and there's some crossover with the burlesque audience that would not be necessarily adverse to looking at an academic book. And there's been a couple of co-performers with PhDs who have released ones as well. So there's a little bit of benchmarking alongside, but it's interesting. I like, in my academic work, I'm always telling my students I really love to see them playing with words and make it catchy. We get our thesis drafts come in and they'll have the titles and whatnot. I'm like, you can jazz it up a bit, put some jazz hands in the title and make it sound kind of entertaining. Let me entertain you.
Because I'm at the stage, Lola, of being late Bette Davis in my career, particularly Baby Jane, I call them lipstick titles. So I sort of apply it like late Bette Davis in Baby Jane, just, you know, when more is more. So I often call them a lipstick title, and they prioritize the importance of that as a marketing device. We buy books on titles.
Yep.
Fantastic.
So is it sort of in terms of one thing I noticed when I was doing the writing of it was there's a crossover between the industry practice of your unique selling point and the academic requirement of an original contribution, significant original contribution to knowledge.
Yeah.
To me, they seemed almost the same thing. And as I was dancing between academia and the media, you know, my research into what was making this project unique within academia was able to translate very well to the other kind of world. So
yes, you're absolutely right. But again, you've hit something crucial there, that a lot of the PhD was what's my SOC, what's my significant original contribution to knowledge. But actually, as the Jackster knows, in a book, you've got to dance between I'm new, I'm original, I'm special, I am my own single discipline. And actually they're going, no, you're not, girlfriend, you know, go sit down, go out to the car park and sort yourself out, right? Because actually you need to show it's risk management. You need to show that other publishers have published books like this.
They've taken
and
the
they found an audience, right? So you need to say, I'm original, so I'm doing this work that no one else has done. But can I just log? And you've seen it in all the ones that I sent you. I've gone, you know, this is what I'm doing, and I'm special, but I'm not that special, because there are these 15 other people and books that exist in these other areas. So there is an audience because other publishers have taken the risk.
Yeah. So I'm special, I'm original, but I'm situated within a body of knowledge, or a successful body of sales.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you more. Now, because there's a wonderful person in shadow, I'm trying to see, is it Kay McFarlane? I'm trying to see which Kay in my life it is. Hello?
Yes, Kate. Sorry, I can turn the light on.
Darling, it's lovely to see you. No, I'm so
I'll put the light on quickly. Sorry.
Oh no, darling, I was just trying to work out which McFarlane in my life it was, and I couldn't see the face. How are you, Kate, darling?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I just had a question around. So, you know, in order to make the title grabby and interesting, I mean, how creative can we be on this? Because, you know, I've published a couple of articles in my field since my PhD, and, you know, there's requirements like 12-word limit. It's often quite dry. I don't know if this is specific to my discipline or not, but, you know, I'm thinking through some of the books I know, and they are pretty dry. So, I mean, how do we find that balance?
Yeah, so Kate Dallimore, it is changing. It is changing in that what I tend to go for now and works very well is a lipstick title and a descriptive subtitle. Right. So that therefore there's content, what the hell is going on here? But the title is able to hook somebody's interest in. Now, there are particular things you can't do, probably sweary, yeah, nah. I love it. But yeah, don't swear. Obviously putting any sort of abuse of other people in the title is a problem. So you've got to be clear and precise, but make it provocative if it helps, Kate. The main
I don't think it would help in my field. This is why I was just thinking through this, because I'm in international relations, and maybe where I think it's a fairly dry discipline, you know, as far as these things go.
But think of flair.
Maybe flair. I can think of flair.
Put flair in the title, because you remember you've got in your field a very crowded market. And so therefore making sure that you get through that crowded market and you're able to find an audience, you're going to need a title to help you do that.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's brilliant. Well done, you. Now, Piper, are we winning? How are you going with all of this?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm winning yet, Tara.
I think you are. And I'll just click down to one for Lorraine, because we are going to talk audience, but I just wanted you to be my transition woman, as you always are, between title and audience. You and I do interfaces. Now, obviously, you're doing provocative, really out there, fantastic research. Have you got any vibes on titles? Because I'd like you to go hard in your area.
Well, my audience, I was just got my head around the audience, and I've written down several. And then when titles came up, you know, the lipstick and descriptive, a title for the overall thesis is something that I'm a little bit stuck with. For each of the chapters, quite good, but the overarching title, yeah, I don't think I've got the lipstick. I think I've just got a bit of description, and it is dry, it is boring. So yeah, I need to get creative with that title. But my audience, I think, ranges from program designers in the Veterans Affairs, treatment service providers, health professionals, policymakers, subculture, academics who are interested, people who are interested in military, so social justice. I think that I've got a really and people who are just interested in motorcycle groups, and the history. So I think for my next books, I think I've got a few avenues for sales, hopefully. But stuck on the title. Sorry, Tara, not help with that.
No, you are brilliantly. So Lorraine, you've also led us into something else too, where that audience is great. We're going to talk about your readership in a second. But I think when you've talked about a book, I think that's books. So what I would do with your thesis is I would cut away the subcultural theory. I would make that a standalone Emerald or Springer theoretical book, and that therefore accesses all that subcultural, post-subcultural audience, which is a big one: cultural studies, media studies, sociology. Thanks for playing Boom Boom. And then, of course, the wonderful research you've done on motorcycles. And remember that is a very, very bespoke specialist audience. And that allows you to target that group brilliantly with the Veterans Affairs component.
Yeah, thank you.
So those two, I would separate them. And a lot of theses are like that. Now, if you've done the big one, that can be 11, 12, 15 articles. It can also be a small book, a short book, and a long book. And that's what you've done there, mate.
Lovely. Thank you, Tara.
Fantastic. Now, Arena, darling one, we haven't talked with you in ages. So how are you going, and what book is in your vista, my queen? Because I'd like to talk about readership and audiences, and you're great on that. So what are we working on, darling?
Oh, hi. So good to see you. Long time.
Love you.
No see. There was a section in my thesis in the literature review, which I called The Lost History of E-Learning. And as soon as I wrote it, I thought, oh my God, there's so much more about something that's completely lost. I didn't realize that nobody's actually pulled it all together. And so I started tossing the idea around with a few people, but I don't particularly see myself as writing the history, but I do see myself as working with others who can contribute, because in my professional life, I know so many have a window into different parts, and it's not one continuous sort of line. It starts here and it ends there. It sort of twirls around a lot.
Right. So
and so I've tested the idea of, do we need for a start to document this lost history of e-learning? And I've presented at a conference recently where I asked the question, well, does it matter if we don't have a lost history of e-learning? So my thoughts are, in being, a fond reader of books, is, does it matter? I mean, that seems to me a very important question. Is it going to make a difference? Would it matter if it was never written?
Well, see, I think it does. So let me now be your agent, right? So,
Okay.
Marina, firstly, that title I would buy. You saw Jackie went, I'll buy this. That's a great title. The second title, does this lost history even matter? That is the title of the introduction of the book. So the mattering is crucial. And Irina, in terms of writing that, my feeling is that's an edited collection. So that, without a doubt in my mind, you are the editor of that book, and you deal with your wonderful network of colleagues around the world, and you get each of those remarkable humans to write a fragment of that lost history. And that's your book, In, Out, Shake It All About. I think Springer Education would grab that with both hands and jump up and down and have a great time.
Thank you.
That's easy. Now, John, so Irina, we're going to talk about audience, but let's go between you and John, the readership for your book. So John, talk to me. If you had a question, let's go, and then let's workshop your readership, mate.
Okay, well, firstly, let's start. When I did my project outline for my PhD, they asked me to be specific about what it was about, and it came up with the boring project title of Japanese Doctors in Australia Before and During the Period of the Immigration Restriction Act.
Yes.
Okay, bit of a mouthful, and I didn't like it particularly, so it's gradually changed along the way. I see my audience as perhaps some of the people here, the history buffs, the scholars of international relationships, Japanophiles, perhaps Australian history students, and medical history buffs.
Excellent.
And I've turned that title into this. Can you see that?
Oh.
So what do people think of that? I think that's a good pull-in. And yeah, it says it all in a few words.
Yeah, so John, here's one I prepared earlier, colleagues. Here's John. So that title is magnificent. It's a great transition from the thesis, which was the sort of the descriptive thing for 2 examiners, to that. I think that's great. Where I would add some subtlety, and Jack, we might go to you to help John with the disciplinary specificity, is I would be using Japanese studies, Asian studies scholars. I would be using scholars of medical studies, health studies. So focus on the interdisciplinarity of it. Yes, you've got the crucial big audience of Australian studies and Australian history. And that's not only an Australian audience, as that wonderful Kiwis on the call know, a lot of Australian history is taught not only New Zealand too, for which I apologise, but there are Australian studies around the world. So Australian studies is crucial, Australian history is crucial. But John, I would be talking about disciplines for that audience. Jack, have I been wrong there?
No, absolutely never wrong, Tara. It's absolutely crucial to take those bigger blocks of audiences or groups of audiences and sub-audience them, subcategorize them. That's probably a better way. So talking about within the medical profession, you'll have doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, all of these groups who might be interested in this. So you've got the practitioners, but you've got the academics in those areas as well who may be interested. A lot of allied health professionals, nurses, they're reading these types of books because they're interested in the history of medicine in Australia. So you've got your scholars, but you've also got the professional groups. I think that your scholars are probably going to be the bigger hunks of audiences, hopefully. But you've got these other categories as well. One other thing I want to say about titles, Tara, and it's something I know you've talked about before, and it's really good to bring it up. It's great to have a catchy title, but don't make it so obscure in the catchiness that it's going to be hard to find it when people are doing a Google search for kind of keywords around whatever the topic of your book is. So you want it to be able to come up really quickly, and the ones that have been mentioned today will, because they've got those keywords in them. It can be really tempting to kind of play on some popular culture at the moment with titles, but that can really kind of push them down a Google search engine. So you've really got to keep in mind these keywords that people will be searching for. Think about what you do when you look for a book in an area. You type in keywords to find it. So do the same thing with your own book.
Absolutely right. And make sure a couple of the punchy keywords, as we said to Lola, Jack, so making sure burlesque is there, making sure performance is there, so the performance studies people find it. But Jack's again captured, John, the changes in the history of publishing, even in the last 20 years. My beloved late husband, Steve Redhead, often used to focus on, he'd get the cover and the title and he'd put it up against a wall and look at how it would look as in a bookshop right? Because that's how people used to buy books. Now, that's not how people buy books now, John. They buy it on a cover and a title on Amazon, right? So you need to make sure the title is clear, the keywords are there if you do a Google search for it, and the cover looks great on a screen. How are we going, John?
Yeah, I do a bit of graphics, and being an architect by background, the design interests me a lot. I'm sorry I haven't got a mock-up already, but I've got that in my mind.
Oh, and of course, you know, there are actual people that design book covers. Can I say I designed about half of mine? So it's a weird thing. I did it accidentally, but because the vista of the book is part of the marketing and the project itself.
Yeah, perhaps this is an earlier time, but my first book from 16 years ago was this, if you can see it there.
Beautiful book. It's a beautiful book.
I don't know that it's quite as punchy in its title, but I also had fun with the graphics and the thinking of it there and what those pearls meant. And in some ways, they were the tombstones that led you through the story. But in the cover, I've got the boat with the sails up on the front and it with the sails down on the back going right round. So, yeah, I'm fascinated by the graphics of
John,
it.
that's a great cover, because that's the first time I met John. I never knew he'd be in a program that I'd be the dean of. But, you know, also, John, in terms of that book, you know, the pearl industry that linked in so strongly with the history of multiculturalism at that time as well. That's the audience for that book. So you've done brilliantly, John. Have we helped a little bit about forcing in that audience and readership in a different way?
You've made me think more about what specifically is the readership. That book, my first book, is self-published. My second one went to a publisher, Hesperian. It didn't have quite the grab, and that company very much objects to the big publishers. It doesn't put things online. It doesn't get to that North American audience. It's very restricted. So you've got to come at it in both ways. I mean, it was the first book that got me the second book, but yes, I've got to find some way of getting to that broader audience and establishing that credibility. I think of what you haven't discussed at all, and what I haven't seen is possibly to do with somebody introducing you, of being referred to a publisher by somebody in the know or is connected. It interests me here that CDU has had, I'm not sure how it is now, a publishing wing itself. It ought to be surely looking at the publications from its PhD students, and I hope there is possibility for introductions there and an interchange of what's important.
Oh, and look, Don, I'll check on that for you. But can I say, John, sorry, I know the accent suggests I'm Australian, but, you know, I'm Australian by birth, probably not by orientation. Can I just recommend not having an Australian publisher? For you, at this point of your career with that thesis, I would be going to Springer, I would be going to Emerald, I would be going to Routledge. That's where I'd be going. And so they've got a fully online ebook publishing market. And, you know, I'm very happy to introduce you to editors there. That's not a problem at all. But also know that you've got commissioning editors that are interested in the book. They're not hugely interested in the networking, the patronage model. That stuff's gone in publishing because they need the book to sell, John. And patronage will only sell a few books. A quality book with a quality title and good marketing will make them money. And we live in a neoliberal age. So making money is more important than patronage. I haven't convinced you, have I, John?
Oh, yeah, you have. I just not sort of quite in that world. So, yeah, I take all advice on board.
Yeah. And also, and I want to have a chat with Sean because I want to find out Sean's story, where Sean's going on all of this. But what I'd say as we're moving into the Sean conversation is, John, the cleverest thing I ever did, and I'm an idiot and I'm a random, but the smartest thing I did about 2006-07, and I'm now at, I think, 22 books, right? But the smartest thing I did about book 6 was, and the book was City Imaging, is I learned something, that the audience isn't only North America and it isn't only the United Kingdom. And the lesson I learned was target very specific national markets. And I accidentally discovered that my books sell enormously in Saudi Arabia. Now, who knew that was a thing? I asked the publishers for a full list of national audiences, and every one of my books since City Imaging has had this huge audience in Saudi Arabia. Phenomenal. I have a big audience in Algeria as well. Who knew this was the thing? So what I'm, I suppose, teaching and helping people think about is we all focus on the Australian market or the Kiwi market or the British market or the Canadian market. And actually, it's a big, wonderful world out there. And in this particular proposal that you're writing, if you can focus on, you know what, this book has an audience in the Middle East for these reasons, and show that this audience exists in French-speaking African nations, and explain that. So really get granular and don't just assume, you know, the easy market is always the textbook market in the United States. But the trouble is that's also an overpopulated market. So just be aware of the international market there, John, all right? I'm not convincing him.
No.
No. You're the best. Oh, I love you, John. You know that, you bugger. Sean, hello. Now, tell us about you and tell us your story, Sean.
Well, there's two books that I'm looking at publishing.
Yes.
One being a publication of seed biology and germination information for Northern Territory species. So the last book that came out that gave a lot of detail on how to germinate and the viability levels of native species was 1986 with Landkampf. And many other states have similar publications focused on their flora, giving a whole lot of seed viability information, germination information, etc. That's very valuable for land care groups, for mining environmental officers, etc. So we've had a project that looked at 70 odd local species, and so I've also done some projects with undergraduate students, also germinating seeds as well. And so I'm sort of looking at making sure that information is available for the next 30 years for and it's too big sort of to put into a journal paper, then you would lose all of the information on the different species in terms of how to, purity rates and things like that. So, yeah. So that's one thing.
So Sean, let's start there. Let's just start there firstly. Let's find for you, and I'll do a good search straight after this gig today, find a great environment publisher. Obviously, Springer has their Big Biol series, right? And that's a thing. But for you, this is, I'd imagine we're doing a lot of illustrations. Are there illustrations in the book as well, mate?
More graphs and tables than illustrations.
Great. That's
because
important.
I don't have access to sort of photos of all of the seeds and that sort of thing. And to actually go to that level, that's another 12 months of having seeds there, photographing. And yes, Kings Park in Western Australia has done that. But then they had a person there basically who was very skilled with a camera and just did that probably for 9 months.
Yeah, I was going to. The People's Republic of Western Australia is not a general data set, Sean. So, mate, can I say, so what we need to do is find a good environment publisher, and they are growing in number, that also have their online, so it is an ebook as well. Yeah. So you've got the sustainability of paper. You need both. So you need a hardback, and you also need an ebook. So there are fantastic publishers around the world that are specialising in environment-based matters, and they will grab that. How long is it, Sean? Is it going to be a short book or a longer book? How long, mate?
Probably about 90 pages.
Oh, great. So it's a short book. We're living the dream here. So that is great. Short book. I'll do research for you, Sean. And that one's great. And as I said, you can see, colleagues, we need it in hardback, so it's in libraries and sustainable. And for interested parties, we need it as an ebook that they can carry around on a mobile device. Brilliant. So, Sean, what's the second book, mate?
The second one is on the Australian native rice. So for the last sort of 4 years, we've been looking at the Australian native rice and how to cultivate it. And again, early on the Canadian native rice industry, one of the agriculture extension people there wrote this wonderful manual that had a whole lot of detail about each stages of growing and processing native rice. And we found that really valuable, and we'd like to do something similar.
Well, I think that would be, and Jack, I'll get your advice too. I think that's what in publishing is now a handbook. The word handbook is being used a great deal. And again, that has some traction, that has some movement, Sean. So I think that one's a handbook. It's longer, Sean, is it? How long's that one, mate?
Maybe 150 pages, I guess.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, mate, as you've picked up and see, the Canadian audience is crucial. People forget about the Canadian audience. So I would be very much going for, I think, probably a University of Toronto press. I'll go through and list all the university presses for you, Sean. And I'd imagine because they've got co-publishing deals with UNSW here. So this is an example of where you'd go to a university press with a co-partnership deal with an Australian university press, and of course Emerald University Press, Edinburgh University Press works with so many of the international presses, so they have a nice network, so you can feed off their audience and their geography. How about that, Sean?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, that's brilliant. So that's changed my life. But Sean, that's a great example for people to think about, how does this audience work and how the platform that you're selecting for this research resonates. So you need particularly hardback and you need ebook. You need both.
Yeah.
You're a rock star, Sean. Thank you so much for being here today. You're changing my life. This is amazing. Oh, thanks for that. The men in my life, whatever. Queen Lorraine, rescue me. How are you, superstar?
I'm really well, thank you, Tara. I just have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's an obvious question or a silly question. Intellectual property. So if you've been doing your research through the university, how does that, your thesis, imagine it's all correct and there I come out with a PhD. How does that not impact on then publishing privately?
What a great question. So I know we've got international colleagues on the call, so I'll be as specific as I can on this. So in Australia, high degree students own their own IP unless they sign it away. So if you've accidentally signed something, Lorraine, after a couple of Cardinals,
I don't think so.
There, just check if that was an IP agreement. Otherwise, we're winning, mate. So yeah, you own it. Can I say in Aotearoa, New Zealand, it's quite ambivalent at the moment. So do check what you've signed, colleagues, because there's almost, and of course I've been very much looking at what's happening at Massey and Waikato. There is the notion that the student doesn't own their IP, but it's certainly ambivalent. So for our Kiwis on the call, really look at what you've signed, okay? It's not clear. And, in the United Kingdom, they tend to own IP. In North America, tend to own IP, but it depends on the system. In Indonesia, it again tends to be ambivalent. We haven't got clarity. John, straight to you, mate.
I've just got a small related question. When you, in the front of your thesis, you're required to put sign a declaration. The declaration as it stands, I'll read the last little bit of it, is I give consent to this copy of my thesis when deposited in the university library, being made available for loan and photocopying online via the university's open access repository eSpace.
Yes.
Where does your right to postpone that or see that doesn't happen before the opportunity for publication exists?
So, John, I believe you know the Dean of Graduate Studies at CDU, and she likes you a lot, I've heard. There's a thing called an embargo, mate, which just about every university I know has. And if colleagues are in the market for a book, and we might talk about career stuff, but if the book is your future, the moment you submit your thesis, I need you to submit an embargo, which means it's deposited in the library, but it's not open access, John. So therefore...
Okay, so it doesn't affect the actual declaration, but I've got to make sure it has an embargo.
That's exactly right, and it's fine. So normally you get it for 2 years, and that's fine. Extensions are possible. I've just signed an extension this morning. So that's how you handle it. Winning? Fantastic. I need to quickly touch base with the wonderful Susan Pryor, who I'm hoping we get a chance to enrol at some point. Susan, mate, how are you going? Because obviously you're doing this incredible work with photographs on Norfolk Island. So, you know, and you're doing this incredible online work. What's publishing success look like for you, Susan?
Book. Just a book.
You want a book?
Yeah, I'm hoping to put something together about Norfolk Island's reef and lagoons, but I don't want it just to be a field guide. I want to look at the history of since colonial settlement and how that's affected the reef as we have it today, in terms of you know, the problems it has and doesn't have, and the geography and how that's been, you know, changed, manufacturing that happened around the edges of the bay. So it's a bit of a genre bender in that respect. So I'm not quite sure where it's sitting at the moment. So I've got the content that it's all down. I'm just massaging it into a flow. So yeah.
Oh, Susan, it's brilliant. And can I say, of course, the other thing to say about Susan, she is a professional writer and professional editor. I met Susan in a previous life, didn't I, Susan? Unbelievable.
A long time ago.
A long time ago, but all that professional writing expertise that you have has to go into your author biography, right? So from your perspective, how I would be marketing your work is in the burgeoning area of island studies.
Yes, okay.
Island studies is this huge area, big journals supporting it. Routledge is believed very strongly in island studies. So I think it's probably a Routledge book, depending on the scope and
I've
scale.
written that down, actually.
Depending on the scope and
When
scale of
someone mentioned it.
illustrations. How many illustrations? Is it going to be photo heavy, mate?
Oh, very, very, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Right, so let me work on that. So that'll be the challenge. So I need to then find a publisher that can really manage those images, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Definitely.
you're the best. You're the best, Susan. Look, can I talk with Kylie, because I've been looking at Kylie forever. How are you, Kyles?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tara.
Now, can you and I, because we're reaching sort of the end of this party, and I need to do the really grimy capitalist how we sell stuff bit. So can you walk with me through the sort of grimy capitalist bit?
Oh, well, I'm at Southern Cross University here at Lismore with Shay, and I work in the area of Indigenous knowledge. So I've got about 5 different books, short books I think I can write, but probably the one that will get written first is to do with fishnet making that we're doing here, getting a whole heap of cultural groups, like people across the Bundjalung Nation doing that. And we've got wonderful pictures from our first workshop. And we've got all these galleries that want to hang the fishing net. So it's a community engaged research project. But I saw your post and we hadn't even thought about writing a book. We're thinking more journal articles, but I've just had a journal article published, and there was a lot of to and throwing about explaining Aboriginal cultural terms, which was a little frustrating. So I'd like to kind of just have that accepted, and I'm hoping that's the case when you write a book. You don't need to explain every single thing.
Exactly. And also, Kylie, you've got the space to be able to stretch as well and take people on a journey with you, take a breath. The thing about a journal article is it's punching people in the throat, right? It's an abstract, it's sort of like shouting, bye. And that works for some areas, but for many areas, and I would argue particularly Indigenous studies as it exists around the world, the capacity to walk with people, to marinate and sit in somebody's life and allow those resonances to emerge, that's important. And that is the space of a book, Kyles. So it's perfect for what you're talking about here. And I think, as you've said, there's a book series here. I'm terribly interested in the fishnet making. I think that's phenomenal. And so, Kylie, the decision you've got to make, and it's a hard decision, there's no right answer here, is whether we go for an Indigenous press, and some of the most remarkable presses in this country, to be frank, are Indigenous owned, edited, published, magnificent, fantastic distribution mechanisms. So whether that occurs or we consider the international Indigenous audiences, and again, we go to an international university press. How are we going there, Kylie?
No, I like the suggestions and happy to sort of look into both of them. So,
oh, that's fantastic. Brilliant. So you're fantastic, darling. Kylie will hang in there. Shay, darling, I don't know if you're joining us. Can I say hi, Shay? Or Shay, not Shay. I'm seeing a beautiful...
I'm having camera problems.
That's all right.
But
Can I use your voice for the final little bit of this, and you can walk with me on this, darling?
yes, certainly.
About a marketing plan. So for all the colleagues on the call, we need to find a way to get you to 750 sales, which doesn't sound a lot. I know it doesn't sound a lot, but you need to find a way to guarantee and nail that down for a publisher. So we need to start to develop what's called your author platform. Who you are, it doesn't matter if you've never published a book before or you're wonderful John or Jackie, but what is your author platform? Who are you? Why would people buy your book? And Shay, how would you convey how you're going to get to 750 sales? How would you construct that argument?
I've got a couple of books that I'm interested in writing, and one of them will be a kind of a textbook for educators. So it'll be a how-to framework, rationale, reasoning, all of that, and also complete curriculum frameworks, activities, and further resources. So it'll be a kit for educators. And my marketing will be based on education for the future needs to happen now. And at the moment, educators are not quite sure how to do it. We're failing our educators, which fails the students. It's no good just giving them curriculum without showing them how to use it. So they need the guidance that they need to be confident to grow the young people for the 21st and 22nd century.
I'd buy that book. Right, so that's doing a lot of things right, Shay. It's a textbook, and you've called a spade a shovel. It is a textbook for teacher education programs, which are large. They are national, but they're also international. It's a how-to guide, again, tick a box, and it is providing a framework of resources. So everything is there for you. I would make sure you're going for, again, I'd be accessing the Springer Singapore. Oh, there's my girl. The Springer Singapore market. I'd be going for Springer Singapore, and that will then provide a national mobility of your ideas digitally, Shay.
Springer Singapore, okay.
That's fantastic. Now, what was the second book, Shay?
Oh, okay. Second book is for the human being who's disgruntled with not having enough time in capitalism. So it's about time, and it's about how time eats our lives and how to step out of that. And it's not a how-to book as far as goal setting or any of that kind of stuff. It's more what happened when clock time was brought into reasoning, and how that industrial era mechanistic paradigm doesn't really serve us. It serves capitalism and corporate capitalism, but the impact that it's had on people and how we can shift our cognition and our consciousness out of that and relate to life in a slightly more
brilliant. So that's post E.P. Thompson, Time and Industrial Capitalism. That is absolutely magnificent, and that, Shay, has Verso written all over it.
What does that mean?
Verso is a magnificent publisher that focuses very strongly on theorization of capitalism from a Marxian perspective, and they focus on big concepts, big tropes in and through that. So Verso would absolutely love that book, Shay.
And what was the other book that you mentioned? Time and Late Capitalism.
Oh, no. So the one for E.P. Thompson, of course, John will probably be looking at me and laughing at me, but E.P. Thompson was this fantastic English historian. He wrote The Making of the English Working Class that made his career, but he also wrote a fantastic article about time and industrial capitalism, how industrial modalities of capitalism transformed our understanding of time and task orientation. So, Shay, you are basically doing another amazing amazing version of that. That is phenomenal.
I'm going to try.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Shay, just to finish us off too, and of course I saw that Jackie's done some wonderful comments about an author profile. What would you stress in your author profile, Shay? So you're presenting the self, and obviously Lola's our queen for this, but presenting the self to sell a book. What would you stress, Shay?
For the first one, I would stress my educational background and my success with my students when I taught this material. Brilliant. And the success with the cohorts that I've taught. So I would stress the practical success. And I would also stress that all educational literature says exactly the same thing. Global education futures, for example, say this has to change and this has to change now, and this is how it needs to change. So I'm answering a very well documented need. Very grounded, very practical. For the second one, I would stress my own experience as a young person and some of the personal stories with the problems with industrialized time, and that I'm just an ordinary person, and that I've included this material with students in the classroom who've been very temporally distressed, and that the distress and the suicide rates of our young people are a very important part of this question.
Right, so Shay, you've just come up with your title there, Temporal Distress. Straight in, I'd buy it. Thanks. Worth getting up this morning. You're the best, Shay. Jackster, can you and I finish, because I'm conscious of time, colleagues. I'm so grateful for this beautiful moment where we have celebrated the book and its value in forwarding knowledge. But Jackster, you've talked a lot about social media, and I've talked a lot about social media. Do you want to just talk about the value of that in selling, sorry to be dreadful, but in selling books?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tara. Publishers love it if you've got a well-established social media profile. You know, particularly now that Twitter has kind of gone a bit random and weird, there seems to be a shift to a couple of different platforms, including LinkedIn. But, you know, if you can show them that you're regularly posting on there about your academic work, and you're building your followers through that, that's going to give them even more incentive to take your book up, but also try to separate the personal from the professional. I think that's absolutely key. You know, I have these students who rock up to first year courses and they go, I'm an influencer. And my eyes just start rolling around wildly, and they go, I've got 300 followers on Instagram. And when you look at when you stalk them, inverted commas, joking, but you go and look at their social media profile, and the stuff they post is so embarrassing, and you think, do you not understand that people are going to look at that? And I'm talking to a group of adults here, but the lesson is separate the professional and the personal on those platforms, and continually post, you know, a couple of times a week like Tara does with LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to post your publications, to ask people questions. You know, are you an early career researcher trying to, you know, get ahead in the game and figure out where to publish? Then read this article or read this book. So, yeah, use those platforms and make sure your publishers know that you're on there.
Very well said, Jack. So, colleagues, what I would finish off with, and I'm just so grateful for your time and your expertise. It's been a blessing to me, and I thank you. And I appreciate your time, as the wonderful Shay has described. Time is very precious, and your time is precious. But can I say there is a gift, such a gift of being a writer. There is such a gift of being able to, at the end of one's life, say, you have written a book, because it is such a service to the planet, because someone is giving you their time. They're walking with you and your ideas when they could be doing all sorts of other things, and they are sharing your ideas and your experience. So as Jackie said, when we are engaging in social media and multimodal platforms, being respectful of the gift of being an author and kind and decent to the other humans around you, and not having your ass out of a pair of trousers, is probably crucial, because there is credibility here. This is academic publishing, and it is about credibility, not gravitas. You can be delightful and a whole person, but you've also got to demonstrate the respect for yourself, for the ideas, and for the people who will spend real money and read your book. So colleagues, I thank you so much for your time. Please keep in touch with me forever. And as I said, this is the first one of many different types of publishing gigs that we're going to do. And on behalf of Charles Darwin University, I thank you so much for your time. You are very precious. You are a blessing.
Thank you, Tara.
Love you, Jack. Love
Thanks,
you.
Tara.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tara.
colleagues.
Bye.
You're very precious.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.